Okay.
Hello, welcome back to Archaeologists Behaving Badly. I'm Belle.
I'm Raquel.
And it's been a while.
It's been a really long time. And I don't even think we have an excuse for it. It just is what it is.
Just life and all of the things. And we've sort of forgotten how to do it.
It's been a few months now. Anyway, we're back.
We are, whether you like it or not.
Whether you like it or not. But this episode is going to be fun. It's about the USA.
Yeah, we thought, given the election, not that anything we talk about is related to the election, but...
Yeah, it's just obviously there's a lot going on. And so we thought I would like to know more about the US.
Yeah.
So why not? Anyway, let's do it.
All right.
I'm going first.
I'm going first.
Yep.
All right. So I have a couple of things. I did write this about 4 months ago and haven't read it since.
Okay. So that's great. It's new for everyone.
Fingers crossed. So the first thing I'm talking about is a guy named Robert Dwayne Ballard.
Okay.
So he's a retired US Navy officer and a professor of oceanography and the director of the Institute for Archaeological Oceanography at the University of Rhode Island. But he is famous for his contributions to maritime archaeology and marine geology.
Okay.
And I just chose him because his CV is insane.
Okay.
So he was born in 1942 in Kansas. While at high school, his father connected him with oceanographers at Scripps Institute of Oceanography, and he participated in several short research expeditions. In 1962, he worked part-time with the Ocean Systems Group at North American Aviation. I didn't know that aviation places had ocean groups, but I guess...
True, I guess.
They do?
I don't know. I guess they do. Maybe it's just lumped in the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not land.
Not anything other than land, yeah.
In 1965, he graduated from UC Santa Barbara with degrees in chemistry and geology.
Jesus.
Smart guy.
Very smart cookie.
His first graduate degree was from the University of Hawaii's Institute of Geophysics, where he trained porpoises and whales.
What?
Lots of fun.
That does sound lots of fun.
I don't know what he was training them to do, but...
True.
While he was working towards a PhD in marine geology at the University of Southern California in 1967, he was called to active duty and transferred from the Army to the US Navy as an oceanographer. He left active duty in 1970 and in 1974 completed his PhD in marine geology and geophysics at the University of Rhode Island. So...
A lot. Just incredibly intelligent.
Yeah.
Does lots of stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool.
And so this is all... He's only like 30.
Okay. Well...
Which is really offensive.
That is so offensive. Calm the fuck down.
So his discoveries. So he is most famous for, in 1985, discovering the wreck of the RMS Titanic. Which I had never thought about the fact that we didn't know where the wreck was exactly until that late.
No, I thought that was I just thought we always knew where it was, but we couldn't get to it.
I think they had a rough idea, but he was the guy.
Wow.
He actually originally planned to keep its location a secret because he considered the site a cemetery and didn't want anyone removing artifacts. So, love him.
Yeah, fair, but also very hard to get down there and remove anything.
True.
It's very, very far down. We all know how that turns out.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
In 1989, he discovered the wreck of the Nazi battleship Bismarck, which was a German battleship that sunk off the coast of France in 15,000 feet of water.
Wow.
Which is 4,000 feet deeper than the Titanic.
Oh, shit. Really?
And he found the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown in 1998, which I believe I looked up at the time, but didn't write anything about why.
Fair enough.
That was famous. But he was the guy that, if something sunk, a plane or a boat,
you'll find it.
He's the guy you call. He's also the person who discovered the wreck of John F. Kennedy's PT-109 in 2002.
Whoa.
PT-109 was a ship. It was rammed in 1943 by the Japanese destroyer Amagiri in the Solomon Islands. This work also brought long-deserved recognition to Byukugasa and Ironi Kumana, who found JFK and other surviving crew after searching for days in a dugout canoe.
Whoa.
So he, I think went to the Solomon Islands, talked to them, and, they kind of finally got some recognition for the fact that they had gone out and looked for survivors from the ship sinking and brought them back.
Oh, yeah. That's cute.
Yeah.
I love a cute story.
Ballard is also the person who discovered hydrothermal vents, where life goes on powered by nutrient chemicals emitted by vents on the ocean floor, rather than them surviving from sunlight, because it's too deep down, there's no light.
Yeah.
He said that finding hydrothermal vents beats the hell out of finding the Titanic, and supposedly his mother replied, "It's too bad you found that rusty old boat. They're only going to remember you for finding it."
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess depends how you look at it.
Yeah.
Both very cool, I would say.
Yeah.
Equally as cool, but yeah. The Titanic, that's huge.
Yeah.
Had no idea.
Yeah, I just found it so, because the movie came out in 96 or something like that.
Amazing
Or
movie.
98. It is a classic. I haven't watched it for a while.
I haven't watched it for a while either.
Which was only 10 years after they actually found it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
How does that...
Yeah, that's mental.
It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Yes, so that is Robert Dwayne Ballard, who we should all know his name, I reckon.
Yeah, fully.
And there should be a movie about his life.
Yeah. Why isn't he in the Titanic? Shouldn't he be? Shouldn't there be a little
bit
person, a little bit about him?
Finding it, yeah.
That would be cool. I think they missed an opportunity there.
They did.
Yeah.
But he could have a biopic, about...
Fully. About his entire career?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next little thing I'm going to talk about is the Mesa Verde National Park, which is in Colorado.
Cool.
Mesa Verde was the first national park designated with the express purpose of preserving the works of man. In this case, remnants of 6th to 12th century ancestral Puebloans, as exemplified by more than 4,000 known archaeological sites within the park, including some of the most notable and well-preserved in the entire of the US.
Wow.
The park's signature attractions are, it's roughly 600 ancient dwellings carved into rock alcoves.
So cool.
And they're beautiful.
We can put some photos up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stumbled upon by a pair of cowboys who called it Cliff Palace in the late 19th century. At that point, Mesa Verde had been vacant for hundreds of years, and experts think that the last Puebloan residents of the area were forced out when their population was booming and had sort of exhausted the natural resources.
Right, so couldn't
Super
house
close.
as many people anymore.
Yeah. Since 1906, the park has been preserved for the enjoyment and education of everybody, but there have been some oil and gas development in the area that kind of pose a bit of a threat to the landscape.
Yeah.
Classic.
Gotta have that oil.
So sad.
Yeah.
Tours of the site offer details of the people's lives, and there are trails for hiking and snowshoeing and stuff. Ancestral Puebloans and their archaeological culture are often referred to as Anasazi, which I've definitely seen written.
Yeah, no, I've heard of them before. Yeah.
So that term was introduced by a guy called Alfred V. Kidder because it's a Navajo word that he thought meant old people. It actually means enemy ancestors. Oh. So it's not really used anymore.
Is it
Yeah, it's bad.
Like a bad word?
Because, it's not used because people find it derogatory, which is understandable.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
So don't use that.
So it's
I have
ancestral Puebloans. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
They lived in small family pit houses, larger structures to house clans, grand pueblos, and cliff dwellings for defence. I've been to one site called the Bandelier National Monument, which is in New Mexico.
Cool.
And I think I need to find some photos from that trip to put up.
So cool.
It's insane. It's insane.
Wow.
Gorgeous. And even on the way there, we stopped at, so I went with a couple of friends when I went to stay with them in the States who are archaeologists as well. So that's why they took me there.
Yeah.
And we stopped at, it was really nearby. It was the top of a mountain that was an old volcanic something or other. Cool. And there was just obsidian everywhere. Everywhere.
Wow.
Artifacts and non-artifactual obsidian just lying around, poking out of the ground. Yeah.
Cool.
I feel like maybe I'm missing a page, actually.
Uh-oh.
I'll just read it as if I'm not, and hopefully
it all works out.
It all works out, because this is no longer about ancestral Puebloans. It begins. So the general consensus is that Paleolithic hunter-gatherers arrived in North America via the Beringia land bridge between 26 and 19,000 years ago. And that's the land bridge that was between Alaska and Siberia.
Okay, yep.
That's now water.
Yep.
But the precise date has been a long-standing open question. There's a theory called the Clovis First theory. I don't know if you ever...
Yeah, but isn't that been kind of
Yeah.
We've kind of put that to rest, haven't we?
But I feel like I definitely... I mean, we didn't go to uni that long ago, and I was definitely learning about that there.
And my only limited, knowledge about that is that it's, very... Archaeologists generally are very, very pro Clovis First.
Yeah.
But I think as the last couple of years have come out, we've got more archaeology coming up, it's being challenged more and more, and I think it's been kind of put to rest now.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I wrote this 4 months ago. Perhaps I wrote something about that. We'll find out. So the Clovis First theory posited that the Clovis culture represents the earliest human presence in the Americas about 13,000 years ago. And it was pretty accepted until the 2010s. But evidence of pre-Clovis human activity has pushed back the date for the peopling of the Americas. Academics generally believe now it happened between 15 and 20,000 years ago, but there's been some controversial archaeological evidence suggesting it was before the last glacial maximum, so earlier than 20,000 years ago. One such site is in New Mexico, and it's a mammoth butchering site. And I remember seeing this when it was in the news, maybe a few years ago, because that's been dated to 37,000 years ago.
Yeah, wow. That's a big jump.
And New Mexico's pretty far south.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, if people are coming from the north,
Yeah.
if that's the theory,
Yeah. It's a long way.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the site was discovered by a hiker who saw a tusk coming out of the ground. Excavation revealed the skeletons of an adult female mammoth and a juvenile. Most of the bones were grouped in a pile, and the adult skull was sitting on top. So they carbon dated the collagen in the bones, which gave an estimation of between 36 and 39,000 years old. Some of the bones were crafted into knives. Other bones showed signs of being broken with a blunt instrument. Tiny particles found in the sediment around the bones included crystallized ash, so there was some sort of burning something. Cooking, maybe.
Yeah.
The reason this and many other sites with early evidence are considered inconclusive is that it's hard to definitively attribute human activity
Yeah.
to ancient bones because natural processes can cause similar kinds of damage to the bones. So
Yeah,
not
and
obviously
deposition.
making them into a knife.
Yeah.
That's clearly people.
Yeah.
But you can't say for sure that happened when the mammoths were killed.
Yeah.
That could have been people later on stumbling across
100%.
the bones and then doing stuff with them.
Yeah.
So that's
Redepositing them in a different way.
part of why it's hard to say for sure. Yeah. And then I had one other tiny little one, which is the Roanoke Lost Colony. I don't know if you've ever heard of this.
No.
It's just, I've scribbled it. It's really interesting to look more in depth.
Is there like a little series about it?
Maybe.
Like, I don't know if it was on like Foxtel back in the day, or like cable TV back in the day, or something. And it's like the search for. No, maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. I don't know.
The only one that I think you might be talking about is like a treasure hunter one. That's from a pirate
I don't know.
treasure.
It could be.
But
Sorry.
This is so in what's now North Carolina on like a little island, there was an attempt by a guy named Sir Walter Raleigh to found the first permanent English settlement in North America
Okay.
in 1585.
What?
Yeah, I forget that colonial America, because colonial
yeah, of
Australia
course.
is
Yeah.
1780s. I forget that colonial America is
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
actually much older.
Yeah. Of course, because like the Spanish and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were troubled by poor relations with local tribes,
Fair enough.
not surprising, and a lack of supplies. A resupply mission was delayed, so Governor Ralph Lane returned to England with Sir Francis Drake in 1586.
So Francis Drake.
Yeah.
Oh my god, cute.
So a second expedition by a guy called John White in 1587, he was directed by Ralph Lane, the governor of the other settlement, to set up another little settlement nearby.
Yeah, okay.
White, so that was in 1587. White had to return to England in 1588 for supplies.
Okay.
So they obviously hadn't learnt anything from
No.
the first go.
No. Whoops.
Yeah. Then the Anglo-Spanish War broke out and delayed him returning from England. So he left in 1588. He returned to the island and to the settlement in 1590.
Oh shit.
2 years later. And I'm pretty sure he had like he left his partner there and maybe like a couple of kids.
Shit. Bye.
And the settlement was like roughly 120 people.
Okay.
When he got back in 1590, the settlement was fortified, but there was nobody there.
What?
Not a person.
What?
Yeah.
Where'd they go?
No one knows for sure still.
Wow.
The word Croatoan was carved into a they had a fence made of like stakes, and the word Croatoan was carved into it. Nearby, there was an island called that.
Okay.
That was inhabited by Indigenous people. And he wanted to kind of chase that up, but there was rough seas, they lost an anchor, and so he had to just go back to England.
What?
So there's been a theory of that they were all massacred, but there was no evidence of that. And now it's more accepted that they did go to the nearby island, that they had like carved the name of it, and that they assimilated into the Indigenous tribe. And there's something called the Dare Stones, which was his daughter, I think. They're attributed to her carving stuff into stones, like carving stories and stuff into stones.
Wow.
There was also reports from like 1600 of white people being seen living in tribes.
Wow.
And since 1998, there's the Croatoan Project, which is an archaeological project that's working towards working out what happened, but basically confirming that they assimilated into...
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And so he just never went back. He went back to England and then was just like, oh, well, there's my wife and kids.
I actually don't know that. And this was very, very quickly written. But, yeah, it's a really, really cool story. Like, imagine going back and just everyone's... It's just deserted.
Gone.
The settlement's deserted.
Like, no sign of, like, foul play.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm so intrigued.
Yeah.
I wonder if they could do, like, DNA testing from, like, his, like, ancestors or current living, you know.
True.
Relatives.
Yeah.
And then see if they can, like, find, I don't know, like, maybe that's the way to do it. That would, I don't know. That's crazy.
When it's that far back, does DNA testing, can it capture that level of,
I don't know.
you know, like hundreds of years of separation?
Well, I don't know.
Like if I did a DNA, I suppose.
Well, I saw this really interesting show. It's a Swedish show. And it was about these, it's a true story about this serial killer who like killed a couple of, or maybe it was like just killed 2 people or something. I can't remember if it was a serial, anyway. And he killed 2 people and they couldn't find who did it. Like they had no idea. And it was in this like, I think it was in like Gothenburg or something like that in Sweden. And so they got this guy to come in who basically takes DNA and does like, looks at your family tree.
Okay.
And with enough samples of enough people in the population that he got, it just took a couple of people for him to sequence and kind of work backwards and forwards. So you're kind of going backwards and forwards in time. And then he managed to find the person. And it was through doing that. And having the DNA of the suspect and then...
Like from the crime scene?
From the crime scene. And then looking at DNA and then...
Of his relatives?
Yeah. Of all like... of other people. I don't know. I'm fully fucking explaining this wrong. But it was really interesting. And they did that with the Golden... Was it the Golden Gate Killer or something? American?
Okay.
Something like that. They did the same thing there. And they use this technique. So I don't know. So maybe you could.
Maybe you could.
I don't really know how that works, but that's really interesting.
Yeah. So definitely, well, now I want to know if what you're thinking of, there was actually a show about it. But if it was back in the days of cable TV.
Back in those days.
Foxtel is what it was called in Australia.
Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I am thinking of a treasure thing. I don't know. Probably.
But yes, that's that's all I had to say about the US.
I want to know more about that.
Yeah. I feel like there has to be a really good documentary on it. Like
Surely.
it's such a I feel like I see reels about it.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, my algorithm's been working for me.
Your algorithm is fucked. It's pretty fucked, but it's in a great way. In a good way.
Yeah, that's it. So
Cool. All right.
your turn.
My turn.
Again, Raquel with the stack.
Okay, yeah, but this is not all. Yeah, it's not that much. I mean, it's a lot, but anyway, it's fine. It's going to be fine. We're good. Cool. So USA, it's such a broad topic.
Yeah.
I didn't even know where to start. But I came across something that I had never heard of before, and that was the Casa Grande Ruins National Monument. I've never heard of it before, and I'll put some pictures up.
We definitely don't learn much about US.
No, we don't.
History.
Nah, we learn
In general.
Nah, we get it from movies, and that's about it. I did watch National Treasure, the first one,
the other day because we talked
about it,
and
I did it, and I think the second one's better. I didn't. It almost felt like I was watching an 80s movie.
Oh.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is not how I remember it.
This is not as amazing.
This is not as incredible as I thought it was. Yeah, that was a bit. Anyway, that was a bit disappointing. But what's
I'm very sorry to hear that.
Thank you. I needed that. So the Casa Grande Ruins National Monument is home to the remains of several ancient structures, all enclosed within like a protective compound wall, something like that. It doesn't look very big. It looks, I guess, like the main thing doesn't look very big.
Yeah.
The ruins were built by the Hohokam people who farmed the Gila Valley as early as the 13th century. So they'd been around for a while. Archaeological findings suggest that the people who constructed the Casa Grande were also pioneers of large-scale irrigation farming. So that's why it's all linked. And they developed vast trade networks that thrived for over 1,000 years up until around 1450.
Cool.
Yeah.
Whereabouts?
That's a good question. And I know it. Why didn't I write that? It's not Nevada. I think it's close to Nevada.
I'm just going to really quickly look it up.
The Casa
Grande.
Oh, there's a TV series of it apparently. That's kind of cool.
Arizona.
Okay. So there we go. Arizona. So Casa Grande is obviously a Spanish term. It just means big house. And so it was stumbled upon by obviously like Spanish people who were there obviously in the 16th century. In the O'odham language, it is known as Siwan Wa'aki. These names refer to the most prominent structure on the site, a massive 4-story adobe building that may have been abandoned by the mid-1400s.
4 stories?
Yeah. It's really big.
Yeah.
And it's constructed from caliche, a natural rock-hard soil. And I think basically...
That sounds like it would be terrible to dig through.
Yeah. And so I think they use like traditional adobe methods. So I think it was just like you kind of stack it on top of each other like gradually and then, so they would layer damp adobe, allowing it to dry before adding more. And it creates really thick, sturdy walls.
Cool.
Yeah. So Casa Grande even had a ball court, which I think is really cool. We kind of touched a little bit on that in the Mayan episode. Yeah. And they're similar to those found at the Pueblo Grande in Nevada. Suggesting cultural connections with other communities, like in the area, which is really cool. The first recorded European to lay eyes on the ruins was Father Eusebio Kino in 1694, and it was he who gave it the name Casa Grande. Unfortunately, this is really unfortunate, some of the walls bear graffiti from people in like the 19th century, like travelers like going through the area.
Dicks.
Absolute assholes. And obviously that's like strictly prohibited now. And to protect the site, a distinctive modern roof was added in 1932. But I think that was actually a reconstruction of one that they implemented, I think, in the early 1900s.
Yeah. The crazy thing about archaeology is that graffiti would be considered archaeology.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, that still gives us insight. I'm not for it, but it is very interesting.
Yeah.
It's like in Egypt when you go to like most of the main like temples and stuff.
Yeah.
Or like monuments rather.
Yeah,
and
there's
you
heaps
see
of graffiti.
so much graffiti from people like 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Just like scribbling their names and stuff.
Yeah. People are gonna people.
People are going to people. I know, so true. So in terms of preservation, the first major repairs took place in 1891 under the supervision of Cosmos Mendeleev of the Bureau of American Ethnology. In 1892, President Benjamin Harrison took action to protect the site, establishing a 480-acre reserve, the very first prehistoric and cultural preserve in the United States. Which is really cool.
Just for the archaeology.
Yeah. Then in 1918, President Woodrow Wilson designated it a national monument. Years later, in 1966, Casa Grande ruins officially joined the National Register of Historic Places, ensuring its continued protection.
Good.
And I'm going to put some photos up because it's really kind of cool. And I guess it's not what I expected. I don't know, because it's just not what I expected that to look like. But I guess like 4 stories high, it's pretty...
It's got to have some structural integrity.
Yeah, 100%. So from 1937 to 1940, the Civilian Conservation Corps constructed a series of adobe buildings at the site meant to house park staff and serve as administrative offices, built using the traditional techniques as the original. Mm-hmm. And so those structures are also now protected because they're old now. They're coming up to almost 100 years. And they're kind of like landmarks in their own right, which I think is kind of cool. Kind of continued.
I wonder what the US, because you know how here, so in the state that we live and work, the Heritage Act protects anything older than 75 years, which this year is 1950 and before, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Because that's not that long ago.
No, yeah.
I wonder what the...
Yeah, I have no idea what
it is. If it's state by state, it would be state by state. It
must
there.
be. What the regulations are. I guess it would depend on, I don't know, like the actual landscape itself. Like if you're living in a state that just would naturally have more of those things, maybe your legislation would be tighter. But I don't know. It'd be really interesting because I mean,
don't know much.
No, I mean, but we know archaeologists that work there, so like it's not
probably
like,
wouldn't be that hard to find out.
Yeah,
Maybe I should have made some calls before doing this episode and actually asked them what it's like to work as archaeologists there. All I know is that you don't get paid that much.
yeah. I think we get paid better here.
Yeah.
So that's all I had to say about that one. This next one is really funny, and I had to get the laptop so I can also show Belle in real time what you see, because it's the funniest shit I've ever seen. So in October 1890, James O. Scotford of Edmore in Michigan announced a shocking find. An assortment of ancient-looking artifacts, including a clay cup and carved tablets covered in strange, almost hieroglyphic-looking script.
Interesting.
Very interesting. News of the discovery spread quickly, attracting treasure hunters eager to unearth more of these finds. Soon more relics were being unearthed in the area, apparently. Scotford was a well-known digger and sign painter.
A well-known digger and sign painter?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting job titles. Don't know if like the digger part just refers to like him digging this kind of stuff up.
Yeah.
But he didn't work alone. He had a team, and so there was like a syndicate that was formed of people that lived in that area who basically put money in and wanted to find more of these, objects, and so would pay him to dig random places.
Okay.
And then when they found something, he would like get them to come over when he found something, and then they would all look at it together and be like, oh my God, this is amazing, kind of thing. Interesting.
So they just had some cash and wanted to be involved.
Yeah, in maybe what they thought like
sponsoring him to.
Kind of. Yeah, kind of like an early sponsorship situation. So the group of investors who were the syndicate kind of started purchasing these artifacts and hoping to profit from the finds, obviously. So the syndicate kind of wanted all these artifacts and then sell them off and make a profit, and that was kind of, anyway, the deal. By 1907, Scotford had partnered with Daniel E. Soper, a former Michigan Secretary of State who had resigned after being accused of embezzlement. I just think that says a lot, right? Before we go any further, I just think that says a lot.
There's couple red flags.
There's a couple of red flags. We can see them, Together they claim to have unearthed thousands of artifacts across 16 Michigan counties. These relics included coins, pipes, boxes, figurines, and even cuneiform tablets depicting biblical scenes. Like Moses and the Ten Commandments and stuff like that. And prehistoric kings as well, with copper crowns and a copy of Noah's diary itself, right? Anyway. The Detroit News even reported that Scotford and Soper were selling some of these bizarre items. That was in the wrong spot. Skepticism over the relics arose early. In 1891, Professor Albert Emerson visited the sites, examined the artifacts, and quickly dismissed them as fakes, calling them humbugs of the first water. I don't know what that means. In 1892, University of Michigan Professor Francis W. Kelsey and University of Pennsylvania Professor Morris Jastrow Jr. analyzed the descriptions and found a chaotic mix of ancient scripts, none of which made sense together. Now, I'm going to show you
Okay. I'm excited.
What it looked like, and sorry, can we just look? What the fuck is that? It looks like, okay, for those of just listening at home, for those watching on YouTube, you can see what we are looking at now. And it looks like you've told an 8-year-old that's never seen hieroglyphics before or what like a pharaoh looks like, and you've described it to them, and then they've just
Why is he so
made
fat? Is he drinking? Is that a glass of wine?
What, like it's just the most crude.
Yeah.
Like it looks like it looks like something I would have done when I was 8.
It's very scribbly.
It's very scribbly.
And I feel like
this isn't
when you find any sort of, it doesn't matter of the artistic skill of the person making it, but any tablet, relief, engraving, whatever, there's time put into it. It doesn't look like a mess.
Oh, that's not it. There's another one. And there is another one, and it's like a cup and this like stele kind of thing made out of clay, and it is just like the worst shit I've ever seen. it's like oh look, we found, like, it's just, anyway, I'll put it up and you'll see it. So the problems didn't stop there. Scholars noticed that the so-called hieroglyphics were just random cuneiform style markings. Some figures like lions were missing tails. Something an ancient artist obviously wouldn't have missed. The clay items showed impressions from machine sawed boards, an obvious modern giveaway. And many objects crumbled when exposed to water, making it impossible for them to have survived underground.
Yeah, true.
At all. Like, apparently they would just fall apart, and especially exposed to water, they would just disintegrate because they were just made from, like, shitty clay that someone's just quickly dug up from their backyard. Like, it's... Anyway.
We talk about, like, anytime we talk about hoaxes or forgeries or whatever, we talk about how it's, like...
Yeah.
Especially back then.
Yeah.
Not that hard to just put a little bit of effort.
No, 100%. 100%. And we've talked about fakes and frauds before that were brilliant.
Yeah.
That were really good at what they do.
Yeah.
And they even, like, everyone was fooled by it.
Yeah.
But this, I mean, this is embarrassing.
Just a cash grab, and...
It's embarrassing. But it gets better.
Oh, God.
It gets better. So despite overwhelming evidence that the relics were fraudulent, Scotford and Soper never confessed. Even after multiple investigations and damning reports, like the one from University of Chicago, Professor Frederick Starr in 1911, they continued their work until their deaths in the 1920s. Scotford's own stepdaughter even signed an affidavit stating that she had witnessed him making the artifacts. When she confronted him, he allegedly threatened her life. But apparently that wasn't going to stop the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That wasn't going to stop them. So the hoax had reached 2 members of the LDS Church. In 1909, Mormon scientist James E. Talmage travelled to Michigan, participating in a dig, and then tested the artifacts in his lab. He concluded that they were fakes. He had concluded they were flakes, but not everyone was convinced. Rudolf Etzenhauser, a travelling elder in the reorganised Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, believed the relics validated the Book of Mormon and even wrote a book about them. After James Savage's death in 1927, his collection of relics ended up at the University of Notre Dame. They remained there until the 1960s when Milton R. Hunter, a member of the LDS Church's New World Archaeological Foundation, rediscovered them. Hunter believed the artifacts were linked to the Book of Mormon's Nephites and dedicated his life to proving their authenticity. What?
Have we talked about Mormons at all, and like Joseph Smith and the tablets and stuff?
We haven't.
Okay, I think we'll need to
maybe we should
work that into an episode.
Let us know if you want us to go into that.
I might just do it whether you want it or not.
I think we will anyway. We were going to ask because we're, wanting to think of some episode ideas. Maybe we'll just do that.
We say this every time we sort of start up again. We're going to be more organised this time, but we actually do want to make a list, a long list, plan out some episodes.
Be a little bit more on it.
Yeah. So if you have joined us again, thank you.
Thank you very much.
If you can think of anything specific that you want us to talk a little bit about, please let us know.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. But what? But what the fuck? So, it's been absolutely categorically refuted in terms of, it is not real. We have affidavits by the fucking stepdaughter.
But you still are going to dedicate your life.
You'll find meaning where you want to find it.
It's so true.
You know what I mean? If that's going to give you some kind of purpose, that's what happens. In the 1970s, Notre Dame handed the collection over to Hunter, who later donated it to the LDS Church. In 2001, anthropologist Richard B. Stamps of Oakland University analysed the relics and confirmed they were obviously forgeries, made using contemporary tools, which we which they already knew about. Back in the early 1900s.
That they were cut with them.
Yeah, they already knew that. But obviously it needed further clarification, apparently. So 2 years later, in 2003, the LDS Church transferred the 797 objects to the Michigan History Museum in Lansing. The museum even created an exhibit called Digging Up Controversy, the Michigan Relics, putting the infamous hoax on display. So it just seems like to me that in 2003, the LDS Church were like, all right, we can't really keep using this anymore as like...
we're going to say...
We're just going to have to take an L.
It's not a thing.
It's not a thing, let it go.
But then they got put on display.
But like I said, we have talked about some forgeries that are crazy good, that experts get like fooled on.
Yeah.
And then you've got this shit. That just, I don't care from when you were looking at them, you would know that can't be. Just can't be.
And I'm sure that those artifacts it's like what we were just saying before about graffiti becoming a part of the archaeological record. Like, they will be cared for by that museum.
I know.
Because
there's a story behind it.
It's a part of the human story.
It is. That's true. About how we love money. We will do anything we can, including making
ridiculous.
And he was making them himself. He needed to go to art school. I swear to God. What the fuck? Like, he could have gotten his kids to do that. Probably would have done a better job. Anyway. So that was that. I thought that was fun. I thought this was so cool and funny in a way. So in central Kentucky, at the campsite of Camp Nelson, a Union outpost during the Civil War, archaeologists have uncovered a fascinating piece of history. So this wasn't that long ago. I believe it was only a few years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. Among the relics found buried in the soil were fragments of broken bottles that once contained hair dye. Originally established as a Union supply depot, Camp Nelson evolved into one of the largest recruitment and training centers for African American soldiers, as well as like other soldiers. It even took in refugees as well. So this kind of site apparently like kept kind of expanding and was just like a really important site for the Union.
In Kentucky.
And entire families even moved there, refugees moved there. So it was a big, really important site. It spanned over 4,000 acres and it became like a community in the end. It had formed its own kind of like town, and on its outskirts had taverns, bakeries, a prison, even a post office. Like, it was a proper like town. So vibrant and bustling was it that they even had a man named Cassius Jones Young who ran a photography business. And the excavation team found clear evidence of his work with bits of picture frames, glass plates, and chemical bottles buried in the ground.
That's the best part about what we do, I reckon, is when you have some really specific person or aspect, the occupants of the whatever you're looking at, and you find stuff that you can relate
to that particular person at that particular time. Yeah, that's 100%. It becomes tangible. It's like, so they found a lot of them. They found a lot of these hair dyes, and they were like, what the fuck is going on? why all these soldiers needing hair dye. And they realised that because photography was kind of booming during this period, because soldiers wanted their portraits taken, like photos taken of them to either send home or as mementos to the service, or just in case they didn't survive the war, they just had like something of them. They actually took it very seriously and they wanted to look their best in the photos. But more importantly, black and white photography doesn't always flatter its subjects, especially then when you've got like overexposure and stuff.
Yeah.
So if you had blonde hair or light brown hair or grey hair, it could either make you look 10 times older because it would just look washed out.
So they were dyeing their hair to have their portraits taken.
So they were dyeing their hair for their portraits to be taken so that they looked more sprightly or, I don't know, younger and more, I don't know, also that you could see it, I guess, because like, I guess when you think of, you know, like old photos.
They are like washed out a bit.
They're really washed out and so you just want to make it more pronounced. So yeah, like a soldier's image was a representation, not only, like it's not only vanity, but it's also, you know, a representation of his strength and identity and honor and, you know, being a soldier. And so it makes sense that you would want to look your best when you're taking a photo.
That's really sweet.
It is kind of really sweet. And I think us all in this age of social media, I think we can all, you know, kind of connect with that.
Yeah. And it's also just not the sort of thing you think about happening in war.
No, not at all. Well, interestingly enough, I did read, I don't know if I wrote it down, but I think it was only like that photography studio kind of, or the dye was only there for like a year or so because I think they had their supplies cut and possibly couldn't afford it. And so they found all of this, like a lot of it coming up in like the first year or two.
Right.
And
just
then,
from a really thin lens of time.
Yeah. And then it wasn't there anymore. Which makes sense when you're in the midst of war.
Yeah. As it ramps up.
As it ramps up, you're not, you know.
Dyeing your hair to have a portrait.
You're not dying, unfortunately. Unfortunately, you can't. So I thought that was really interesting.
It is.
Yeah, we're done. That's done.
That's it. We did have a little technical difficulty. The video stopped working. So if you listen to the episode, there will be an extra story or two on that of Raquel's at the end, but the video cut off. So we are just going to sign it off.
Yeah.
Here.
And thanks. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you. And don't forget to let us know if you have any suggestions or ideas for episodes.
Yeah, we love that. And say nice things.
Yes. Never mean things.
Never mean things. We can't handle that. But yeah, we're back. And we're excited. And this was really fun. This was a fun episode.
Yeah, this was really good. Yeah. And we will see you next time.
Bye.